to be your hosts and to have you join us while we celebrate Ian's 25 years. Before we get into the business about Ian, though, I want to make a couple of, again, housekeeping announcements, and then we're going to thank the organisers of the Turnbull Symposium. So the first concerns the fellows, the colorectal fellows. At the end of the official program, we want to have a team photograph at those stairs at the back. So please, nobody dash off. Anybody that's been a fellow in the department, please congregate at the end of the program down by those stairs, and we'll see if we can get a good team photograph courtesy of Carl. The second is to thank the people that have supported this event, the audiovisual people, the dining people, the people at the hotel. A great thanks to them for everything that they've done, and we appreciate that. So this Turnbull Symposium has been something special. We've had a fantastic program, some great speakers, been very enjoyable, and there's still more to come tomorrow. And so there's been a lot of hard work behind that, and to thank those people, I want to bring up to the podium, if you can start walking now, by the time I finish the sentence, he should be here, somebody who himself has been the recipient of a great honor this year. Was inducted into the Medical Hall of Fame in Cleveland earlier this year, a great honor for him and for the department, and so I think he deserves a round of applause for that.
Thanks very much, Jim, and in keeping with your remarks, I'd like to move the program right along, but it's my happy task this evening as part of the celebrations for Ian to thank several people who have been instrumental in making the event possible and in helping out so much in the scientific program over the last 2 days and again for tomorrow. So first I would like to thank Tracy Hull. Tracy has been the person who has, and I'd ask Tracy to come up to the podium. Tracy has been the person that we've charged with running the Turnbull Symposium each year, and who has done an outstanding job along with her staff for the success of the program so far, not least of which, and which we're intensely grateful for, is the individuals from outside of the institution, the surgeons who have come in, and our local doctors as well, for presenting such remarkable and superb papers in the last 2 days. I was remarking to someone earlier today that I can't think of a previous symposium that had such a high quality of consistent excellence in presentations, and I know I was taking furious notes throughout all of this. If you don't know the stuff, then you steal and borrow the information you can get from the slides. Dr. Ira Codner, a past expert at acquiring slides that don't really belong to him, I learnt a lot from him. I also want to thank others who are involved in the success of the program. Debbie Queller, our supervisor for the department, Lois Osborne, who is our Hodson, is the person who helps put all of this together as well. Ian's secretary, Pat Baslek, Joyce Ballier, who provided you with the program there this evening, and Carl Engelman, our photographer extraordinaire, and better half of Tracy Hull. Carl, thank you very much for doing all the photography. And now I'd like to present to Tracy a small bouquet of roses, and thanks so much, Tracy, for all of this.
Sorry, you told me I should say something. I only want to echo what he said. Thanks to Lois, Debbie, Marty, and Pat. Certainly you guys have worked your full heads off. Lois is our new education coordinator, and she has really done a marvelous job. I want to thank everybody that returned or came back that was a fellow here before to honor Dr. Lavery. That was very, very special to him, and I really appreciate it. And I want to thank everybody else that came, and I hope you enjoy this evening. As you know, Dr. Church always has a few things up his sleeve, so I think we'll be very highly entertained. One other thing, I do want to thank my husband. You can imagine living and putting up with me is not easy, and he is a saint, so he definitely is my better half.
Thank you, Tracy. And while we're on the topic of the Turnbull Symposium, next year's symposium is actually going to be the Ramsey Symposium. It's going to be held at the new, brand new Cleveland Clinic Conference Center Hotel in August. So please do your best to come to that. It's going to be a box full of Turkish delights next year. And so now we move on to that part of the program that honors Ian for his remarkable accomplishment of 25 years putting up with the Cleveland winter. When you come from a place like Queensland, believe me, there's a huge difference. But Ian has adapted well, like marsupials often do, and here he is today. Some people, it's a bit strange standing up here, and I've been told I look like the Pope, that I look a bit like Orson Welles. I feel a bit like Richard Nixon. I'm not a crook. But I want to start off the evening by dwelling on Ian a little bit, and where we always are writing articles and books at the clinic, and something new is a dictionary, and the word Lavery crops up several times. So if we can just see what the New Cleveland Clinic Dictionary says about the word Lavery. Sometimes it's an adjective, and it can mean quick and efficient. I'm going to have to turn around, I'm sorry. Excuse my back. Such as when a colectomy takes 20 minutes, you could say, oh, I did a Lavery colectomy today. Sometimes things that are really difficult look really easy. It's always the case with Ian. And so you could say something like, boy, that really impressed the residents. And it's a phenomenon when we're trying to put on live surgery. And as a moderator of those courses, you've got to be really quick with Ian. You can't afford to flash to another room. Otherwise, he's done and he's walking out of the operating room. And then finally, the closer it gets to 5 o'clock and Ian's not finished, the more annoyed he gets. And over the years, he's developed a very good technique of keeping his workday between 7 and 5, something that I've tried to emulate without too much success. And when we went to having a 6:30 a.m. staff meeting, that was the end of the world. And so about 10 to 7, Ian would straggle in, voicing his objection. So Lavery can also be a verb, and you residents will identify with this, like Lavery that light and Lavery that bloody sucker, which means to leave them well enough alone. It's okay to Lavery the inferior mesenteric artery, but you better not do that to the aorta, otherwise there could be trouble. Ian's technique of going through the mesentery is, I Laveried the mesentery today. I missed a few vessels, but never mind. And then lavering the bowel out of the pelvis, just a gentle, which is a shame because the residents, the favorite thing they like to do is cut adhesions, and they're out of luck when they're on Ian's service. And then finally, Lavery can be a noun, if I can get that going forward, which means a very brief conversation, and this is how we bill for our consults in the department. So if it takes more than an hour, we often call that a phasio consult. And if it takes 10 minutes or less, then it's a Lavery. So I hope that gives you some picture of what Ian is like at work. He certainly has the knack of making things look really easy, and then when you try it yourself, you wonder how you could be so clumsy and bumble-fingered. And then you go and see him again, and it's just like a magician at work. But it's appropriate now that we hear from a patient and hear from that perspective what Ian's really like. And so we're honored to have tonight one of Ian's patients to come and tell us a little bit about her experiences. Betsy, are you on the way up? Here she is.
Thank you, Dr. Lavery, for giving me the opportunity to share with the guests tonight how wonderful you are. Without realizing it, I started accumulating information for this event 19 years ago. Little did you know what you were in for. Before I met Dr. Lavery, I had been treated medically for Crohn's disease for 5 years. At times during that period, the attendings would ask me to rate the bedside manner of some of the residents, fellows, and medical students. I can only assume that the feeling was, if I can satisfy Betsy, I could satisfy anyone. I haven't gotten any better. In fact, I've gotten worse with age. By my standards, Dr. Lavery is the greatest. Some would say I've had a difficult road because of my Crohn's disease. They're wrong. Dr. Lavery's technical skills notwithstanding, with his kindness, patience, and understanding, it would have been difficult. Regardless of the demands of his time, he always has time to listen to me as though I'm his only patient. Time was and is never of the essence when it comes to listening. He understands that I have a need to feel in control of my disease and my treatment. Who wouldn't feel special having someone like Dr. Lavery to help them with tough decisions? Initially, I had reservations about having children. With Dr. Lavery's advice, I now have 2 healthy boys. And because of him, I know the next generation of colon rectal surgeons will be there to help my boys if they ever need them. It's no secret to those who know me how I feel about him. One day while he was visiting me after one of my surgeries, Dr. Lavery was in my room. Craig, my husband, who was then my boyfriend, came in, and I said, I'd like to introduce you to the real love of my life. Dr. Lavery put his hand out, and Craig said, she's talking about you. So tonight I hope I have conveyed the importance of caring and compassion. In my opinion, there is no better role model. Without you, I don't know if I could have come this far. Can I now finally call you Ian? Thank you for being there for me.
Thank you so much. Well, over the course of his career, Ian has traveled a little bit and has met many friends. Eduardo, if you'd like to start walking up now, then that would be appropriate. And one of his best friends comes from Spain. He's going to come and share some of his reminiscences about Ian. Ian's also been very popular in South America. And so it seems like he likes the Latin side of the world, and we might get to that a little later. Eduardo, push that when you want that. You can turn around a little.
Doesn't go? It's going? Really, I don't know what I do here because I am bad orator in Spanish language, and so can you imagine how orator I am in English language? But it's a privilege to me to be here because Dr. Lavery is a very special person to me. I have many reasons to be grateful to him. First of all, he has always been a master to me in colorectal surgery. I came here to my first visit in 1990 just to learning how to improve the colorectal surgery, maybe in Crohn's disease, as you can see in the picture. Our relationship started with this visit to the Cleveland Clinic. This is not the Mediterranean coast, it's the Lake Erie. I am sailing with Dr. Lavery and another Latin lover just beside him. Since then, we have visited each other many times, and we can see him with our team in Valencia, in Spain, and many of these people that you can see there has been also visiting him. Last year, Dr. Lavery was appointed honorary member of the Association of Spanish Coloproctology Society, and you can see him socializing with our colleagues with the big cigar. During these years, we have become very good friends, and also our families have shared very happy moments. And in this sense, I would like to tell you that Karen Lavery has played a very important role. You can see her in the first position. Maybe you can distinguish him, but in the first position is Karen. So, always in front of a great surgeon, there is always a great woman. I consider myself very lucky to have had the opportunity to meet you and to learn so much from you. Ian, thank you again for all.
Thank you, Eduardo. That picture in the boat looked a bit dangerous. Usually I can't sit up in the first position. I have to be down the back. So, before we go on any further, I want to let you in on something that you might not have appreciated. It's a bit of a secret, and I don't want you to tell it to many people, but Ian Lavery is really an Australian. And some of you might know that I come from New Zealand, where Australians are underappreciated, to say the least. In fact, as I was growing up, my dad used to tell me what a bunch of rotten sods the Australians were. I would sit on his knee and he would tell me stories, and one of those stories went something like this, that there was an Australian ventriloquist who was going on a walking tour of New Zealand. And he was walking through the country back roads, and he saw a Kiwi sitting out on the front porch of his house with his dog beside him. And he thought, oh, let's have a bit of fun. So he stopped and he went up to the Kiwi and said, "G'day, mate. How are you doing? Is that your dog?" And the Kiwi said, "Yeah." Kiwis speak a lot. And the Australian said, "Do you mind if I have a word to him?" And the Kiwi said, "Dogs can't talk, you stupid bloody Aussie." And the Australian said, "G'day, mate. How you doing, dog?" And the dog said, "Fine." And the New Zealander just about dropped his drawers with surprise. And the Australian said, "Is this Kiwi your owner?" And the dog said, "Yep." New Zealand dogs don't say much either. And so the Australian said, "How's he treating you?" And the dog said, "Oh, he treats me pretty well. Takes me for a walk every day, feeds me good food. Sometimes we play." And the Australian said, "Fine." And he said to the Kiwi, "Do you mind if I have a word to your horse?" And the Kiwi said, "Well, horse, I don't think horses speak either, maybe." He was a bit unsure by now. And the Aussie said, "G'day, horse." And the horse said, "G'day." And he said, "How you doing?" The horse said, "Cool." And the Aussie said, "Is this your owner?" The horse said, yep. Does he treat you well? Yeah, he rides me every day, he brushes me down, puts me in the barn when it's raining. The Aussie said to the Kiwi, do you mind if I have a word to your sheep? Quick as a wink, the Kiwi said, that sheep's a liar. So those are the sort of stories I found out about Australians. The Australians are a bit like New Zealanders in one respect. They like to travel, and I found that whenever they leave, they get a map to show them around the world. And this, if we can bring it up, is the map. And this reminded me of another story that I heard, and it concerns, it's a spiritual story, so Australians probably haven't heard it before. It concerns the seventh day of creation when God was resting. And God was in heaven, and Archangel Michael went up to him, and he looked down through the clouds and said, what's that? And God said, that's a planet. I call it Earth, and I'm putting life on it, and it's going to be in perfect balance. And Michael said, balance? Explain that to me. And God said, well, this is continent here I call the Americas. There's North America, which is cold and rich, and South America, which is hot and poor. And right in the middle is Central America, and that's a hot spot. Europe, a country full of white people, and Africa, balancing that, a continent full of black people. And in the middle we have the Middle East, another hot spot. And Michael looked at the earth and he said, he saw these two little islands down on the right-hand side of the map. He said, what's that? And God said, that is the best country in the world. That's New Zealand. It's got fantastic scenery. It's got beautiful mountains. It's got lakes. It's got rivers. It's got beaches. It's beautiful. And the people there, the people are handsome, tall, athletic, well-loved, admired. They're going to travel the world. Everywhere they go, they're going to be liked. They're going to be diplomats. They're going to be kings of society. And Michael said, I thought there was balance. And God said, wait till you see those people I'm putting next door to them. Now that's a more true story. So now I'm going to show you a few frightening photos. Ian knew that was coming. This is the early days, and this is the very early days. So we're going to flash through these fairly quick. I don't think they really need a commentary. So Australians can be a little intimidating when you first see them. And these are really intimidating Australians. Starting to look a bit more respectable. And I'm not sure who that other chap is there, Ian. Who's that? And here's Graham Chicheko, who's in Sydney now. And before Men in Black, there was Men in White. And he's an Australian at heart. Who knows what's in that brown paper bag? Probably a bottle of Bundaberg's Best and a couple of Fosters. And quite debonair there. And there. When you think he's listening to a talk, he's really listening to Australian songs on his little private tranny. And the way we saw him today. Thank you, Joyce, for supplying those. That was fantastic. We're going to move on to a few brief appearances up here. Ira, if you wouldn't mind starting to walk up, of friends and colleagues. And while Ira's coming up, I'm going to read a letter that was sent by Bruce Orkin, who was a fellow in the year before me, all that time ago. First, he starts by saying, I have to apologize for not attending the Turnbull Symposium this year. I had every intention of coming, but at the last minute family conflict arose, etc., etc. More importantly, I want to extend my greetings to Dr. Lavery and the entire Cleveland Clinic faculty and their guests. Ian has been an inspiration to all of us who have had the privilege to work with him. He is the ultimate teacher and clinician. He is calm, steady, logical, thoughtful, and patient. Patient. In addition, he is kind and giving of his time and knowledge. And so after all those nice things that we're hearing about Ian, here's Ira to tell us a few other things.
You know, as I sat down looking at this, I couldn't quite figure out this venue and what was appropriate. So what we're going to do is take a moment, and Jim is going to sing "Don't Cry for Me, Argentina," and then we'll take 5 minutes of everybody shouting, "Perón, Perón." This is, coming to the Cleveland Clinic for me was a new experience in many ways, including meeting Australians. We don't have them in St. Louis. But the relationship with Ian was unique because not only did I meet Australians, but he kind of learned to smoke cigars. When Barbara and I lived on Kenyon and Reedham, we had a room on the 3rd floor, and David Jagelman and Ian and I had made a pact that we were going to create the greatest teaching collection of slides in colon and rectal surgery. Some of it was actually legally done. And as we were up there one day, working away, and Ian was smoking a big Cuban cigar, I glanced over at him and realized that not only had I not seen Australians before, but I had never seen a green Australian. From the slides, it looks like you've made progress. It's a little hard to describe the relationship that exists between Vic and Ian and David Jagelman and I. You're seeing great surgical science at this meeting, and what I would like to instill with you is the concept of great friendship and deep emotional commitment. For those of you who are just coming up, God willing, you'll experience and share just a fraction of what those of us have shared here. Ian, Karen, your family, you're special, and you deserve every second of this evening. My pleasure.
Now, if Tony, Feza, Connor, and Jim could kind of make their way up the stairs, we'll hear from them. It's time to hear from Ian's partners, the people that know him best in a work situation. And each one has their own particular spin to put on things. So we'll start off with Tony Senegal. I'm not singing, don't cry.
Thank you, James. Boy, this is an intimidating position to be in here. I've only had the good fortune to really get to know Ian the last 4 years since I joined the staff here. Originally, Ian was a name on a manuscript when I had to do journal club. And we would always have to present papers, and the Cleveland Clinic obviously figured prominently in a lot of the literature on rectal cancer. And I can assure you, Ian, none of your papers ever made the place where bad papers went, which was the fireplace. So you were safe there. The next thing as I went into colorectal surgery was, it was a name that you didn't want to draw for the oral boards. And thank God I didn't, so otherwise I might not have been here. I then got to know Ian through the years, through different functions with the society, my work with the foundation, and I got to know him with his work on the council, and I really came away with the fact that he has such a common sense approach to most problems, and he's able to make very complex things seem very simple. And since I've had the good fortune to be on the staff here, I've seen that carry over to his patient care and his processes in the operating room. And I've really learned a lot the last 4 years, and I aspire to be able to get home at 5 o'clock at some point in my career, and maybe I'll be able to master that. Thanks, Ian, and good luck and congratulations.
Thank you. I arrived to the United States in 1989, and I started my residency at the Cleveland Clinic in 1990. At that time, I started with Jeff Milsom, which I was literally going to quit after 48 hours, knowing the fact that I was there for 48 hours without any sleep. Subsequent to that, I worked with Dr. Lavery, and at that time, Dr. Joe Chandra was the fellow on the service, and whatever the reason is, Joe, as being a Chinese Australian, was not able to pronounce my name right, and he used to call me Faisal. So I used to be called Faisal for a month, and the fact that Joe scared me out of Dr. Lavery so bad, the meaning of Dr. Lavery at that time meant to me, don't touch the light, don't touch the suction, don't do anything, don't say anything. So I let him call me Faisal for a month without saying a word. After that, the second year, I was working with Tracy, and knowing the fact that Tracy is much more benign and nice to me at that time, that my wife, at that time my fiancée, was coming to see me for a week. I was on Dr. Lavery's service, so I requested Tracy, would you allow me to pick up my wife from the airport? Not a problem. So I went to the airport, being on Dr. Lavery's service, and knowing the fact that he's out of town that day, I went to the airport post-call and sleeping on one of the couches, and suddenly I saw a glare of Dr. Lavery in the airport. I thought that it was a dream, and suddenly somebody tapped my shoulder with Helen and James next to him and told me, hello, Fize. And I was scared. I didn't know what to do. The only thing that I know about it, don't touch the light, don't touch the suction. So, knowing respectfully standing there and just don't saying a word, and knowing the fact that my wife will be coming in the next 15 minutes and didn't see each other for 6 months, that we may be having some influx of passionate emotions that approach towards us, they didn't know what to do. And Dr. Lavery asked me, what are you waiting for? And I said, my wife. And then I said, which airline? TWA. Oh, great. I'm also picking my friend too. Who are you picking? Eduardo. Great. Which flight? Oh, the same flight. Oh, great. So my wife comes out from from the door, and I said, "Welcome to America, sweetheart. We'll talk later. My boss is standing there." So I went down to the luggage claim, and we're talking about it and everything. I thought that everything was done, and I went to the parking lot. Suddenly, Dr. Lavery is coming with Helen and James with his luggages that's parked next to me. And I didn't know what to do at that time. Again, I was scared, and I said I had to introduce my wife to him. So, Dr. Lavery, this is my wife, my future wife, Berna. And then he introduced me to his friend, Eduardo. This is my resident, Dr. Feza Ramsey. And he works with me. And then he said, you will see him early in the morning. And then he looked to my wife, maybe not. So that's the introduction that I had with Dr. Lavery. And subsequent to those years that I got interested in colorectal, went to colorectal, and I was working with Dr. Pfizer for 2.5 years. And during that time, and during my fellowship, the meaning of Lavery turned to me directness, straightness, honesty, and take care of the patient, whatever it takes, and don't worry about the other people's emotions. So after doing that, and one of the occasions that happened that I used to work with Dr. Fazio, and I had to have a time that I could operate in a more controlled fashion without hurrying. So I picked up a day when Dr. Lavery was around, when Dr. Fazio was out of town. And it was a case that was very, very technically difficult. So during that case, that my heart rate was literally faster than the patient, and I called Dr. Lavery to the operating room just to give me a hand. And with his trust and everything, he just looked at me, felt the things, you can do it, and then he walked out. And that established another thing for me, the confidence that I needed. Subsequent to that, we met with Karen, and then the friendship started, and he took me to Turkey with Dr. Fazio for the meeting. And after that, we had a nice dinners and nice conference, and then after this dinner, we had a little bit too much alcohol. And this is a picture that I don't know whether you can see. Dr. Lavery is coming far away, and suddenly he wanted to jump out of the balcony, that I had to dive out and save him. In conclusion, Dr. Lavery, myself and my wife are grateful to God that He allowed us, that our paths has crossed in our lives. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Oh, Fezza, that's a hard act to follow. James, I don't know, but against the red curtain there, you reminded me of Hitler in 39 or the late 30s. Maybe I'm just not as benevolent. Well, I actually beat Fezza to Cleveland, and I came here for about 6 weeks in 1988 as a medical student to work with Dr. Fazio at the time. And I still remember Bruce Orkin and Wayne Tuxon were the team at the time. And I remember the hushed tones when Dr. Lavery's name was mentioned, and the respect was enormous that he was held in even then. I've known him now from 2 further positions when I came back in 99, and I've known him first as a fellow and now more recently as a colleague, and I'm honored to have known him in both capacities. I think Fezza has already said as a teacher, and so have many other people already, what a marvelous teacher he was and what a great experience it was as a fellow. Operating with Ian is fantastic. Apart from what he lets you do and shows you, the ease, the tricks, you've heard it all, you all know. He's just marvelous to work with, and it was a great pleasure and a great honor and a fantastic learning experience. But particularly then now, I've known him as a colleague for a couple of years. And to have somebody like Ian around, the depth of experience, whenever the odd time you have to ask a question, and the huge, massive experience he has to give you an answer and support, again, it's marvelous. A very lucky position to be in. It's like cheating at work. You know, you always know where the right answers are. So again, I feel very lucky to be part of the department, but especially knowing and working with Ian, it's a marvelous bonus. I'll finish up with a story that I'm sure he won't mind me telling, and that is that even though he's so fantastic, he's not quite perfect. On Wednesday, we were interviewing the potential candidates for the fellowship slots for next year, and he'd put on a couple of quick cases, and he came up muttering under his breath in some Australian curse words that it had actually taken him about 3 hours to close a loop ileostomy. So even Ian can sometimes run into trouble. Ian, thanks for the honor of being here and getting to talk, and congratulations.
Dr. and Mrs. Lavery, ladies and gentlemen, the Department of Colorectal Surgery here at the Cleveland Clinic is second to none, and it is due in large measure to you as a single individual that makes this accolade ring true. For those who have graduated from this program, when they're asked how they comport themselves as surgeons, it is not uncommon for me to hear the words, "I do it this way because Dr. Lavery taught me to do it this way." This applies not only to the way that you do your surgery, the way that you care for your patients, but also because of your kindness and compassion as a person and as a man. For those of us who are your students, the greatest compliment we can give to you is emulation. And I can assure you that for all the gifts and all the skills which you have passed down to us, those gifts and lessons have been woven into the fabric of the surgical practices of a generation of surgeons throughout the world. And although many have left Cleveland and are here again tonight and will return to the places where they now practice their craft and you're a model. They always carry a piece of you with them. And on this occasion, in return, we give you and Mrs. Lavery our best wishes and our deep gratitude. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony, Feza, Connor, and Jim. Jim certainly has a knack of putting the right words to the right occasion, doesn't he? Well, it's tradition at the Turnbull dinner in years gone by that one table would outdo another in terms of the jokes that it could come up with. But then over the years, the trend started to get a little blue and a little bluer as the years went by until we finally had to stamp it out and stop the Australians dead in their tracks, and we succeeded in doing that. But one joke that kept on coming up was about a little boy that was tugging on someone's pants. Don't worry, Carol, I'm not going to tell the lion tamer joke tonight. Maybe tomorrow night. But I want to tell you a story about a little boy tugging on someone's pants, and those pants were mine, and the little boy was my son, Jamie. And it happened very early on in my time at the clinic in about 1983, when Ian was still living in Pepper Pike. And he had us round there for a meal one warm sunny afternoon, and my son was about 4 years old at that time. And he took one look at Ian, and then he sort of tapped my pants and said, "Daddy, is that Superman?" And Ian did bear a superficial resemblance to the Man of Steel. The same sort of square jaw, the same imposing presence. And so that kind of inspired me to put the story on tape. And so if we can run the video now, we'll take a look at it. Jamie, is that man Clark Kent? I'm not sure, Jamie. Let's go over and ask him. Mister, are you really Superman from the Justice League of America? Let me tell you a little secret, son. A long time ago, every red-blooded American went to bed at night, safe in the knowledge that they were protected from all harm by the vigilant watch of the Justice League of America. Now, because of specialization in all fields, even superheroes have changed. I now belong to another group that helps clean up the no-good in the innermost bowels of society. I'm a proud member of a very tight group, the Just Ass League of America. Our powers let just ass prevail from the ends of the earth to the far reaches of Uranus. Let me tell you about our members and feel their amazing powers. The Flash's distant cousin, the Flush, is also very fast. Unfortunately, he seems to run around in circles. Once proud Martian manhunter John Johns now helps wipe out Klingons throughout the universe. Aquaman still uses the sheer power of water to clean up where others fear to tread. Unassuming Tracy Hull is hardly recognizable as Sphincter Woman. Once in her grasp, even hardened criminals can't escape. Victor Fazio can solve any problem as Boss Man, also called the Big BM for short. Hero of my homeland as Pouch Boy, defender of Down Under. Dr. Senegal and Delaney form a dynamic duo as Buttman and Scopin, who jump into action at the first sign of a butt signal. Scott Strong is the hero of every housewife as Mr. Clean's smarter and better looking brother, Dr. Clean. As James Wu travels to the satellites, he becomes Astro Boy, who can blast your asteroids into a black hole in outer space. Don't get James Church mad, cause he'll get you in the end. And then there's me, mild-mannered Ian Lavery by day, who turns into Duperman when I smells trouble from my arch-enemy X-Lax Luther, who's on the loose. A pretty impressive group, Just be careful now, Sonny. Don't turn your back on us. All we need is a small opening to infiltrate and clean up the deep, dark secrets that have slipped through the cracks of modern society.
Is this the end of the story? To find out, tune in next year. Same butt time, same butt channel. Till then, remember every American has the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of justice. So, assholes beware. Sooner or later, we'll get you.
I can't stand to fly. I'm not that naive. Man, we're meant to ride with clouds between their knees. I'm only a man who celebrates sheep, digging for kryptonite on this one-way.
And just for you, Ian, when you come up a little later, I have this framed picture of the Just Ass League of America for your office. All the credit for that needs to go to Ken Kula from the art department and Jim Graniero from the audiovisual department, who put this together over the last few days, and thanks to them, although they're not here, I think they deserve a round of applause. It's interesting that Ian's voice on that was a weird mixture of Cockney, New Zealand, a little bit of Southern American, and maybe a touch of Australian. I really needed John Procaccino to lay down that voice track. And so now I want to give a chance for Tracy and Vic to come up here. Tracy first, to give us some of her thoughts about Ian, and then to make a presentation to the better half of Ian, that's Karen.
So my first experience with Dr. Lavery was when I came here to interview for a fellowship spot. And it was purely by accident that I came here. We can blame Neil Hyman, actually, for getting me to come here to interview. And so you're in this room. We don't do it like this anymore because they scared away too many of the fellow applicants. But anyhow, the way they used to do it was all the staff lined up in a room, and then you sat on the other side of the table, and so you had all these icons of surgery staring at you. So anyhow, they're asking you questions, you're a nervous wreck. I'd waited about 4 hours in this room for him to call me in. And so Dr. Lavery looks at me with this deadpan face and said, "You're not so special, why should we take you?" You're like, oh my God. So that was my first experience with him. And then I was lucky enough to come here to do my fellowship. And he was the last rotation that I had at the end of the year. I followed Dr. Fazio, you know, with your hair on fire, hubba, 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 you know how that is. And so my year mates were John Eggenberger, Chris Churko, and Chip Farmer. And I said, well, what can I expect? And each of them gave me a little bit of advice. And, you know, basically, don't touch the lights, don't talk, don't do this, don't do that. I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm never going to survive this 3 months. So the first day I go, and Chris Churko, which is really true, my favorite thing I always think of Dr. Lavery is something she told me, which is really true. She said, don't turn around because he'll have the whole case done with his little finger. He does more operating when you're not paying attention than you can do in the whole case, which is really true. He has this technique. He doesn't look like he's going very fast, and he's got the whole case done. So I go in there and I'm standing real still like a board, and Cheryl Cordell is trying to push me to get me to do something, and I'm standing there scared to death, and he goes, what's wrong with you? I said, I'm scared of you. And he goes, just get up here and do something. So It was only uphill after that, and I really appreciate all the things that I've been taught, the things that you teach, the way you teach, and I hope that I can emulate that with the fellows. And the other thing I appreciate is the advice, because anytime, as we have echoed before, that we have a question, we go to Dr. Lavery, because he certainly doesn't belittle us when we ask even the dumbest things. So thank you very much, and thank you for putting up with the Cleveland Clinic for 25 years. Now, nobody knows better than I do that behind every great career at the Cleveland Clinic, you have to have a good spouse. And I want to tell you a little bit about Dr. Lavery's other half, Mrs. Lavery. She is one of 8 children. There's 6 girls and 2 boys in the family, and she's a twin, if you can believe that, and she's the youngest of the 6 girls. She graduated from Ohio State, yay, go Bucks, with a bachelor's in nursing, and she likes gardening, flowers, and cooking. But above all, I think you can really think of her as a dedicated mother. I think she does a wonderful job of taking care of, besides Dr. Lavery, their 2 children, Helen, and I think that she's also a very caring daughter. Her mother's here, and she is very devoted to taking care of her. But one thing we can really thank her for, I think, looking at those pictures, is that she's turned Dr. Lavery into a GQ dresser. So, you know, all the men should aspire to that. So I would think that we owe Mrs. Karen Lavery a lot of appreciation, because probably without her, Dr. Lavery couldn't be as good as he is. So Karen, could you come up, please?
I can't see a thing. And I am absolutely and totally speechless. I really am speechless. I didn't expect to be up here. I don't think I like being in this position, and I don't think anybody down below can believe that. But there are just a couple things that I will say since I'm up here. Just in the last 24 hours, I've been tremendously impressed by things that I think I thought I knew about my husband, but information that I gained that I didn't know from all of his previous fellows. Wonderful anecdotal stories about Ian's tremendous kindness to the fellows themselves and to patients. And I really got a kick out of just sitting and listening to his fellows talk about Ian. And these were people that I thought that I really knew, and that I thought I knew all the stories. And there were so many other stories that I hadn't heard. And so the man who drives you nuts, you have a new appreciation for. The other thing is I'm absolutely delighted with all of the people who came tonight in honor of Ian, who really extended themselves. If they couldn't come for the whole meeting, they came for the dinner tonight, because Ian means so much to them, as he does to his friends, and as he does to me and to our children. And so it's been a great 19 years finding a partner in crime to do all of this with, and I thank you for that, Ian. And I thank all of you for being here and for being our friends.
Wonderful words, Karen. And I want to echo some of the comments that my colleagues have made, Jim, Tony, Connor, and Tony, and of course Tracy and Faisal, who made some earlier comments. And I also want to thank Jim Church for putting on such a wonderful program this evening. I think his production has been extraordinary. As if you hadn't guessed it already, James is from New Zealand, and New Zealand is the place where, and there's the country where men are men and sheep are nervous. And he's been compared to Citizen Kane, he's been compared to the Pope, he's been compared to Mussolini. I think he looks a bit like Dennis Hazlitt, the chairman of the Board of House of Representatives myself. This evening I want to speak for myself, but I also want to speak for those dozens of fellows who are out there this evening and those who can't be here this evening, who I know would want to say something if they had the opportunity to Ian, our friend and colleague for so many years. For me, 26 years as my professional colleague. And considering our origins from the Antipodes, we were kind of somewhat together from the very beginning. There have been many epithets applied to Ian: hard-working, dedicated, talented, especially a family man, and Karen's words were well taken here this evening. He has his wonderful children, Helen, James, and David. Ian's skills were and are legendary. His techniques of surgery for reoperation of the pelvis, for rectal cancer, for stoma surgery are well known. What isn't perhaps as well known, and for those out there who I will divert into some technicalities, but it was Ian who first really put stapled pouch anal anastomosis on the map. It was he who suggested we declare a moratorium on the techniques of anastomosis we were using for what is now the commonest operation we do in our repertoire at the Cleveland Clinic, and which has led to a certain amount of name and fame accompanying the activities in the department. Above all, Ian has served as a mentor and a role model, someone to be admired and respected and to be emulated. You heard earlier some words from Bruce Orkin, which I think kind of underscored that, and which reflects on what I think the sentiments of most of the fellows here this evening would say. Now, unless you think this is a paragon of virtues, let me tell you the other side of the Ian Lavery. There is the famous Lavery shrug, which some of you may have seen. A patient may sit down in his office and start recounting almost endlessly this sequence of complicated statements and problems, and trying to get some reaction from Dr. Lavery, which ultimately says, "Do you think I'm going to pull through any operation you devise for me, Dr. Lavery?" And there'll come this famous, "I don't know," which certainly stops the conversation pretty much right there. There's the story, of course, of the famous stonefish, which many of you may have seen in his office, a picture of a stone located on a plaque which has been given to him by one of our former workers there, Pat Ginley, because Ian went out fishing one day, took about 10 minutes to land this incredible fish, which proved to be a stone, caught on the end of his hook. Then there was the recent story of his looking or being filmed on video in front of an audience of some 20 famous surgeons from throughout the world, where he was trying to identify the inferior mesenteric artery, and as he was carefully paring away the tissues around it, saying, "I'm looking now for the inferior mesenteric artery. Oh shit, I found it," as the blood hit the floor, the ceiling. Dr. Jagelman, our late partner and friend for many years, would often talk about the Australians in the group and call us coming from the land of the living fossils. And he would often recount the story to Ian in particular, the fact that whenever he flew to Australia and had to fill in the embarkation card, it would ask the question, have you ever been convicted of a felony? And David would write faithfully on it, I didn't know it was still a requirement to get into Australia. And he thought I was going to get away without talking about the story. This epitomizes the Ian Lavery I've come to know and love over the years. And this relates to somewhat technical, he knows what's coming, I can tell, about this massive giant hemangioma of the colon, which is a rare entity and something to be photographed, nurtured, collected, never to be tossed away at all. And he'd just finished doing this profound, incredibly difficult operation in which you end up with a specimen that's like catching a 5-foot trout or something. It's something that you really are very proud of. You want to be posing next to it. And he caught this thing anyway. Took this out, and someone sent it around a pathology lab. He said, "Don't do that. Bring it right back here. I want to see that. I want it photographed." So they faithfully trundled it back before any path had been done on it. And Ian then carefully takes this to the sub-sterile room, which was new in those days, where there was a new system of washing the specimen. And Ian is faithfully opening the specimen up and looking at this beautiful specimen of this giant hemangioma, whereupon he presses the wrong button, which flushes instead of irrigates, and this 5-foot specimen starts to wend its way through the hole there, and he's holding on to one side of it, trying to stop it flushing into Lake Erie, unsuccessfully. And he comes back into the surgeon's room there with his hands out saying, "It's gone." We never did get final pathology on that report. I have to cut him a lot of slack, however, because he's the only one in the department other than me with a normal accent. One of the lines that I most liked about from which I've read in the past has been that from the former coach of the Houston Oilers called Bum Phillips, who used to remark on the talents of one of his arch enemies, Don Shula, saying, he can take his'n, meaning his team, and beat your'n, which in English parlance means your team, and then he can take your'n and beat his'n. And I think this applies to Lavery, that he can take on some of the most difficult operations that are extant in our specialty and make them look very easy. Ian has achieved many honors and many achievements. I mentioned earlier today about the Bundaberg origin, and that the respect and awe in which you are held, Ian, by your fellow surgeons. You've been on the board of governors, you've been on the board of trustees, you're on the best surgeons lists. You have a tenacity beyond belief. I want to read out to you a letter which I have addressed to you from someone at the Cleveland Clinic, and it reads as follows: the Board of Governors of the Cleveland Clinic Foundation and I extend our appreciation to Ian Lavery for his 25 years of service to the Cleveland Clinic. Ian exemplifies the type of physician we all strive to be. As a surgeon and scientist, he's been a mentor to many young physicians. His contributions to the field of colorectal surgery are well documented. His commitments to his patients, his colleagues, and the practice of medicine is at the highest level. The fact that you're all gathered here tonight is a testimony to that commitment. The professional staff of the Cleveland Clinic make our organization great. There is no better representation of that than Dr. Lavery. We extend our congratulations to Dr. Lavery on achieving. Signed, Floyd Loop, Chief Executive Officer, the Cleveland Clinic. I mentioned tenacity a few moments ago, and there are several stories I could tell about that, which I'm not sure how appropriate it is this evening. Suffice it to say that at the time when we were severally being interviewed around 1990 for the new position of Chief Executive Officer, Ian was asked to come down and testify to Art Modell. At that time, he was the president of the Board of Trustees. And he was sort of more or less marched into this room where Modell et al. Were holding forth and his views on the management of the Cleveland Clinic at that time. And you might remember that about this time we'd gone through this somewhat painful experience with respect to our tentative approaches to Cleveland Clinic, Florida. And at that time, Mr. Modell and several of the Board of Trustees who were present were somewhat taken aback, expecting to see this young, brash surgeon coming in cap in hand and more or less somewhat obsequious. On the contrary, Ian was able to sort of say, well, I want to point out something to you guys, that you really have screwed this up. Here we are already in the red. We've only just started there, and that I lay blame for this at the Board of Trustees level. Whereupon they're all aghast, and this epitomizes the integrity, I think, of Ian, and the fact that he'll call a spade a flaming shovel when called upon to do so. There's also no getting around the fact that almost everybody, I'd say everybody with whom Ian comes in contact, just likes him. I mean, he's like Will Rogers. He never met a man he didn't like. And I personally could not have asked for a better colleague over these years. And I think, Ian, that your past mentor, Rupert Turnbull, and your present mentor, Neville Davis, would say, good on you, mate. We're extremely proud of you. Thank you. We have a small presentation, Ian. I'm told not to drop this.
Well, I've got to say I find this rather overwhelming. The 25 years certainly doesn't seem like 25 years tonight anyway. There have been times when you get pretty tired, but these accolades certainly make it everything well worth it. I can't thank Tracy for all the effort that's gone into organizing tonight. Lois, Debbie, Pat, Joyce, everybody that's had anything to do with putting this together has been absolutely fantastic. I've got to say, if it weren't for Karen, I probably wouldn't be here. When we met, I was thinking about going to somewhere where the climate was warmer. I have no regrets about staying, but it's Karen that kept me here in the beginning, and certainly here I am now after 25 years with Helen and James, both fantastic kids, make me proud. But with respect tonight, I just want to thank everybody that's come. I know what an imposition it is when you have to travel, particularly all the fellows that have come. It really is very, very special to me that people have inconvenienced themselves to come and help us celebrate 25 years. I know many of you have come from long distances all throughout the country. Several of my friends have come long distances internationally. Eduardo, who you met before, has come from Spain. John Oakley from Australia. Francisco from Chile. It's just something that I find just incredibly touching. I want to thank Ira especially, and Vic for all the nice things. Ira and Vic and I go back a long, long way. I do wish David Jagelman was with us. Unfortunately, that's not to be the case, but certainly not forgotten. My partners, Vic, Tony, Fezza, Connor, Jim, and we miss Scott, who's off being recertified. Unfortunately, there was a conflict and he couldn't make it, but we certainly miss Scott's presence, and fortunately Mary has been able to join us. Thank you, Mary. This is, I'm just not quite as dumbfounded as Karen was, but I'm always told that I walk around unaware of or oblivious to some of my surroundings. And I've got to say that I have been oblivious to what's been going on to organize this evening. But I can assure you that I appreciate everything that's been done, and if I have forgotten anybody in the process of thanking you all for coming, for organizing it and make such a great evening, please forgive me. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you could. Well, this is such fun, isn't it? Why don't we go for a 26-year anniversary next year? Well, that brings the program to a close. I want to thank you very much for all attending, for your courteous attention, and remind the fellows to shoot back to those stairs, and we'll see if we can get a team photograph. Otherwise, we'll see the MDs tomorrow and the ladies at the next social gathering. So good night to everybody.